Let's first talk about West Asia. Now, as tensions in West Asia escalate, world leaders gathered in New York for the United Nations General Assembly. Now, they've called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon. In the latest, France and the United States have proposed a 21-day ceasefire proposal between the Hezbollah and Israel. The proposal has been welcomed by Lebanon's Prime Minister. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël further urged both the sides to engage in a path of de-escalation and said that Paris had worked with the parties in defining the parameters for a diplomatic solution.
La guerre n'est pas inéluctable.
War is not inevitable. A diplomatic solution is possible. In recent days, we have worked with our American partners on a temporary ceasefire platform to enable negotiations. This platform will be made public very soon, and we are counting on both parties to accept it without delay.
Cette plateforme va être rendue publique très rapidement et nous comptons sur les deux parties pour l'accepter.
While addressing the UNGA, French President Emmanuel Macron called for an end to the Israeli escalation and Hezbollah rocket fire.
Mais dans l'immédiat, au moment où nous nous parlons,
we cannot have a war in Lebanon. There cannot be a war in Lebanon. This is why we urge Israel to cease this escalation in Lebanon and to Hezbollah to cease this missile launch to Israel. We urge all of those who provide them with the means to do so to stop doing so.
Israël, quant à lui, ne peut sans conséquence étendre ses opérations au Liban.
Echoing similar concerns, the UN chief António Guterres said that hell is breaking loose in Lebanon and that diplomatic efforts have intensified to achieve a temporary ceasefire.
Madam President, Excellencies, hell is breaking loose in Lebanon. As I told the General Assembly yesterday, we should all be alarmed by the escalation. Lebanon is at the brink.
Several Arab nations issued a joint call for a temporary ceasefire in Lebanon. In a joint statement, the global leaders said that it is time that diplomacy enables civilians on both the sides of the border to return to their homes safely. US President Joe Biden further warned of the possibility of an all-out war. But he said that he was hopeful a settlement was still achievable for the conflict-torn region. Meanwhile, addressing the UNGA, Israel's UN envoy said that Tel Aviv was open to diplomatic solutions on Lebanon, but vowed to use all means in its goal to degrade the Hezbollah.
Do not mistake a peaceful nation for a defenseless one. We have the means, we have the capabilities to achieve this goal. If diplomacy fails to return our residents to their homes, then we will use all means at our disposal in accordance with international law to achieve our aims.
Speaking before an emergency meeting of the Security Council in New York, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken emphasized that he would prefer a diplomatic solution and outlined that Israel has legitimate interest in seeking to remove Hezbollah from the borders of northern Israel. Meanwhile, Pope Francis, in his weekly audience at the Vatican on Wednesday, expressed his closeness to the Lebanese people, decrying the escalation of violence in the region as unacceptable.
I'm saddened by the news coming from Lebanon, where intense bombing in recent days has caused much death and destruction. I hope that the international community will make every effort to stop this terrible escalation. It is unacceptable. I express my closeness to the Lebanese people who have already suffered too much in the recent past.
Our correspondent Jody Cohen also explains here if a potential 21-day ceasefire deal is truly achievable at this juncture. Listen to her.
The joint statement signed by the US, EU and several Arab countries suggested that a 21-day ceasefire would provide space for diplomacy. Now, there are reports that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has given the green light to talks with the US about a temporary halt in the conflict with Hezbollah in order to allow negotiations for a ceasefire. Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, said that Israel is grateful for all those making efforts with diplomacy to avoid a full war. However, there is some skepticism among Israeli officials about whether diplomacy, which has been attempted over the past 11 months with Hezbollah, would actually work. Danon said that Israel prefers diplomacy, but also that Israel is ready to use all means to degrade Hezbollah's capabilities in accordance with international law if diplomacy fails and Hezbollah do not stop firing rockets. Now, there's no word as yet from Hezbollah, but Iran has said that it's ready to back Hezbollah with all means if the fighting with Israel escalates.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.